Hi Daniel. So today we are talking a bit about the CLEAR Segmentation Lab, which sounds very interesting to me. Can you tell me a bit what is it and what's this project about?
Sure. So the CLEAR Segmentation Lab is an internal approach to turn raw data into intelligent personas. So it's an AI and data-based new way of segmentation and of using these segments productively in your organization.
And what can it do? What are the benefits?
Yeah, so the biggest problems with current segmentation models is that they are quite static. So the CLEAR Segmentation Lab is an approach for dynamic segmentation. So with each new data point, the segments, they actualize themselves. And then what this approach also can do is they can create digital twins for each segment so that you have a KI-based persona where people can really talk to and chat with. For example, when you design a new campaign or new offering and you're not unsure how to differentiate it between segments, you can just talk and chat with your personas to get like real-time insights into the segment and to also build better empathy with these segments.
So AI helps to keep the segments actual.
Yeah, so AI helps us in two ways here. First, it helps us into sorting and structuring the data from the bottom up and from the top down. So to really derive differentiable, actionable segments with the help of the data. And it then helps us also to create these digital twins so that the segments or the personas itself become more actionable, because we have seen it so often in practice that companies create segments and personas, but then they have it and no one knows what to do with it at the end.
Like it's still stuck in the initial design process, but not taken further for the real development process.
It's not usable in the organization. So people think, okay, we need personas, we need segments, but then the question is what to do with it.
Speaking of questions, my question now is, why is it called CLEAR? The C, L, every letter stands for a word, right?
Yeah, so the initial working title was Smart Segmentation Lab, but we didn't like the SS in the name. And then we realized that CLEAR actually stands for our process steps. So this whole lab follows a clear process. And we have seen, luckily, that this adds up to the name CLEAR. And therefore, we decided to name this whole approach CLEAR Segmentation Lab.
Okay, so the first step is starting with C. What is it?
So C stands for collect. So you really want to collect all potential data which you could use for segmentation. And this means combining your first party data also with external data and with open data pools. And while doing so, to secure data security and compliance issues. And to then really create a single point of truth for as much customer data as you can collect as a company or brand.
And next one, L. What does it stand for?
L stands for label. So once you created this single point of truth for the customer data and you collected all internal and external sources, you have to find potential criteria for segmentation. So what criteria could be used to segment? And the challenge here is that basic segmentation approaches, they often use basic demographic data or basic lifestyle data or transaction-based data. So people look at age, marital status, social income, and so on, which is nice, but these data points, they are not so action-oriented. So we all know this example that Ozzy Osbourne and Prince Charles are all in the same segment because they're all old, very rich, living in the UK. So from the demographics, they share the same properties, but obviously they're not in the same segment. And with the second step in our label, we search for such weak signals and behavior-based data points, which we then could use to create more actionable segments.
So we got the data, we made up the segments. Now E. What does E mean?
Yeah, E then means explore. So once you have a long list of different data points, behavioral relevant data points, which you could use for segmentation, you then do the segmentation. And here we combine a top-down and a bottom-up process. So from the bottom up, we look for patterns and clusters in the big data. And from the top down, we develop some hypotheses, which we test. And by combining both approaches, we then derive a really actionable, differentiable, and valid clusters and segments.
Now we have A, assemble.
Yeah, so A stands for sample. So once we find the clusters and our hypotheses are tested and these clusters are differentiable, we then start to assemble the digital twins for each of the segments, where we then combine the data into one chatbot for each segment, so that people can then start talk and use this persona.
And now one last letter left, R.
Yeah, R stands for refine. So here it's about integrating the personas in downstream platforms so that you can really use the personas for example, differentiating campaigns or service offerings. And it also means setting up the processes of continuously updating these personas. Because for us, when we developed this approach, it was really crucial to set up a process where the personas update themselves with each new data point.
Sounds very, like a complex structure, but with a potentially good outcome. For what, in your opinion, for which kind of company could this be a really big benefit?
For all companies who struggle with segmentation and with all companies who struggle with integrating the segmentation in downstream marketing platforms, and also for companies who struggle with collecting and data and to find out what the right data points are for segmentation.
Okay, thanks for introducing me to our CLEAR Segmentation Lab, which is quite smart actually, and leveraging AI also to a certain extent.
Yeah, so
which I find
our
very...
slogan basically is turning raw data into intelligent personas. And I think this depicts the basics of the whole approach.
Cool. Thanks for clearing that up for us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.